Hi, this is an instructional video on how to upgrade your standard unit to an elite unit. Now this also applies to standard locking units and also elite locking units. They're virtually the same in terms of the replacement process. Now let's say that a customer has purchased a standard unit and have come to the realization that their sliding door is far too heavy for a standard unit. Now, what they can do now is, in order to solve this situation, is to simply purchase the Elite motors. Now, this is a standard Elite motor, so this is just a regular Elite motor, no locking function. You know if a motor has a locking function if there is a silver addition afterwards. You can tell this is a standard unit because the motor has a silver portion here instead of a black plastic portion over here. So I'm going to show you how to replace the motor, this motor with this Elite motor. Now to do so, what you first need to do is you need to grab a drill or a screwdriver, and you need to flip the unit over onto the side where you can see these screws that are holding the motor to the frame. So you simply just need to unscrew them, so removing that. So now that you've taken the screws off of your motor and unit, your motor is free to move around, but almost free to move around. The cable, the power cable that runs power from the motherboard and to the motor, so it will transfer data over, needs to be removed as well, but the cable is pinned underneath the motherboard housing. So what we now do is we grab an Allen wrench, like the ones we provide in your AutoSlide kits, and then you go to the motherboard right here, and you'll notice, this is the motherboard casing, you'll notice 4 Allen wrenches, or Allen wrench screws on the sides. You simply just need to unscrew these so that you can remove the motherboard and then therefore take the motor off of the unit. So now what you do is, now with the motherboard removed, you now can have access to the cable that runs to the motor. So just unplug the cable to the motor, put that aside for now, and then you grab your Elite motor and you simply plug in the cord to the Elite motor over onto the motherboard. And now there's a specific way in which you want to put these cables. I'll get to that once I reach that part, but for now we're just going to attach the motor, the new motor, onto the framing of the unit. So grab the screws that you saved from earlier for the motor, put the motor back in, align it, tighten it up, and now with the motor, the new motor attached to the framing of our AutoSlide unit, now we just need to arrange the cables, these 2 cables, in the proper order so that we may place them underneath the motherboard. The reason we do this is just to make the unit look cleaner, and also so that the cables won't possibly get caught in anything important, such as the gear or the track for the AutoSlide system. You don't want that to happen because then you risk possibly damaging your unit. So now I will place the cables inside of the groove that we provide. The groove will be between these 2 silver movable metal pieces. It's these silver pieces that you are going to screw your motherboard case back onto the unit. That is how the motherboard case stays on the unit. So I will place the cables in the proper order. So put the thicker cable that connects up to the motor down first. Then grab the cable that leads from the power, where you grab power from the unit, fold it in half a little bit, and then you're just going to stick it right next to the cable that leads to the motor. This way you'll be able to get the cable on the correct side of the unit. So I will place this back into place, and then once you have it done in the proper order, you simply just need to put the Allen wrench screws back into place. And I must let you or inform you of this. Do be careful about putting the cables back into place because you don't want to accidentally pinch your cables between the framing of the AutoSlide unit, so the metal frame, and the plastic motherboard. Because then you might pinch the cable, it'll cut the cable, and then you'll have to deal with warranty parts being shipped back to you. So now I am going to screw the motherboard case back onto the unit. Now that I've showed you how to replace your standard unit to work as an elite unit, I must also inform you. So after upgrading your motor, after contacting us about upgrading your motor, so in the kit that we'll send you, you'll get your new motor, a new motherboard, so the motherboard that is located inside of the casing here. You will get a new motherboard because the programming between the standard units and the elite units is different. So the last thing you want to do is confuse your unit now with a standard programmed board and an elite programmed motor. So do try not to mix up the boards because the boards look exactly the same because they are. The only difference is they have different programmings in each of them. So now that I've told you that when you get your motor upgrade, you'll get a motor, a new board, and I also must add the battery pack. So this is the battery pack for a standard unit, is completely different for the elites. So the elite battery pack is much thicker. It looks like a laptop battery or power converter, but it is not a laptop power converter. So please do not think you can use your regular laptop to power the unit. I highly recommend it against it. So this will be the battery pack you will be using for your elite unit. If you have a standard unit, your battery pack should be something like this. They come in either white or black. Now that I've shown you how to replace the motor or upgrade your standard unit to an elite unit, I'm also going to inform you of how to reconfigure your unit. So some customers, they have sliding doors that are set up rather different than what the general sliding door is. So let's say when during an install you realize that your door does not reach the motor from this side. So one way of getting around that is actually we can reconfigure the unit, and I'll show you how to do that now. So how you start is, as I've shown you earlier, is to simply unscrew the motor, then remove the motherboard casing, and now what you're going to do is you're going to unplug the cables so that you have a nice clean frame, put everything aside, and then you're going to get to the motor, and using the Allen wrench you were using earlier, you're going to unscrew the gear. So there is a gear over here for the motor. You're going to unscrew it, and then you're going to flip it over, so it's going to be facing this side now. Once you've done that, you're going to place the motor on the other side because we have 4 drilled holes just to attach the motor on the other side. And then you're going to slide over the motherboard case onto the other side. So you've pretty much switched over the positioning of your unit. This way, the gear for the motor will be able to work with a different sized or a different setup sliding door. Now I will show you how to do so. So unscrew the motor. Now the motor's unscrewed. Now I just need to unscrew the motherboard casing. Okay, that's removed. I'm going to unplug all these cables so that they're out of my way, and I'll put this aside for now along with the motor. So now here's our empty AutoSlide skeletal framing. What you're going to do now, just so that it's out of the way, is you're going to push over these metal pieces that hold the motherboard onto the frame. Push them aside so they're out of your way for when you're putting the motor in. Now you're going to grab your motor, and before we attach it back onto the unit, we're actually going to unscrew the gear right here. So use the same Allen wrench you were using earlier for unscrewing the motherboard case. Place it on the screw that's attached to the gear. You're going to tighten it, and then once you've removed the gear from the motor, what you're then going to do is you're going to flip it. So it was on this side at first. Now you're going to put it on the other side. Stick it back in. Now that it's in, now you grab the screw for the motor to keep it in place. Put it back in. Make it nice and tight so that it won't get loose after multiple uses. There we go. Now our motor faces the other way. We'll push over this little protective fabric, and then what we're going to do is we are going to grab this cable, and remember how we folded it earlier? We're now going to keep it straight so that it's facing the other way, and this will go underneath the motor. So now we're going to put the cable underneath the motor, align it with the metal channel for the cables that I've told you about earlier. You're going to put the motor on top, and then you're going to attach the motor on the other side now. So I will put the screws back in. So now that we've attached the motor onto the other side, notice the gear is on the left side facing the back. This is the back, this is the front. We now can get to the next portion of the video, which is connecting the cables onto the motherboard casing after putting the motherboard case back on. So now what we're going to do is we are going to place the case back together. So I will place this casing back on for ease. That's clicked back into place. I'm going to then realign the silver metal pieces that I was telling you about earlier. So place them so that they are exactly parallel to each other. That way you can place the screws on properly. So now what you're going to do is you're going to grab the power cord. You're going to thread it into the groove in which you put the cables for. So like so. So you're going to lean it down into the unit. Then you're going to bend it, and then keep that bend inside of the groove as well. And be sure not to allow the motherboard casing, once you put it back on, to pinch the unit. There we go. Now that this is in place, we're going to grab the motherboard casing along with the motherboard. Align up these screws with the metal, tighten it. Now that I have the motherboard and the motor installed, now I just need to plug the cables back in. So this fat cable with a very large head sticks back into the motor and power labeled functions right here if you see, and then this secondary cable that grabs power from this end of the unit will go right on top of that, or right below that if you are looking at this from a setup on the ceiling aspect. And now that we have our unit put together, this is how your reconfigured unit looks. So now the motor is on this side rather than on this side.